Mr. Alexander and members of the board, I'm faced with a situation which is threatening to destroy my marriage, break up our home, and there are two small children involved in this marriage. I'm married to a girl who, in the parlance of show business, is a stripper. When we were married, she agreed to give up stripping, and she did. But recently she recanted on this promise, and she went back to stripping. Now, before the marriage is broken up completely, I'd like to have the matter settled.
Will you tell us just how long you've been married?
Well, we've been married for almost 5 years now, and for most of this time, over 4 of these years, I have supported my wife and my family in an adequate manner. However, recently I have run into certain financial difficulties, and my income was affected very sharply in a downward fashion. So my wife, without any warning, without any regard for my feelings in the matter, has turned around and gone back to this job of stripping again.
Did you ask her not to do it?
Well, repeatedly, but she paid no attention to my wishes in this matter, and as a result we became separated recently. Now, can you understand how I feel, a man in my situation, having my wife denuding herself in public, which is in direct opposition to my moral principles? And is it possible, do you think, for me to have any self-respect as a husband, as a father, even as just a plain man, when my wife is doing this sort of work, the business of disrobing herself in public?
Well, now, suppose we hear from your wife.
Mr. Alexander, principle is a very fine thing, but you can't eat principle. And I can't give my 2 children principle for breakfast, dinner, and supper. And besides, I believe that if there's no money for food or for rent or for clothing for children, there is no such thing as principle.
Well, now, were you engaged in this particular vocation or occupation prior to the time you married your husband?
Yes, I was. I was a very well-known exotic dancer for many years before I met my husband.
Well, does that mean that you were an entertainer who disrobed?
Yes, exotic dancer is the show business terminology used for a stripteaser. And I worked and made a very good living. I met my husband on a show one evening, and we started to go together. We went together for about 6 months. While I was still working, he proposed marriage and asked me if I would give up my profession when we married, and I agreed. I gave it up. For 4 years or a little more, I lived on his income. And then our second child came, and there was no money. He's an actor, and unfortunately he was out of work. He couldn't get a job. There was no money for rent, no money for food. There was nothing, so I was just desperate. I had to do something.
What did you do for food?
I had to get myself invited to people's homes for something to eat, which is a pretty embarrassing situation.
And then what did you finally do?
Without saying anything to my husband, I went down to an agent that I had worked for before, and I got some bookings.
As an exotic dancer?
As an exotic dancer.
And then what happened?
And I paid up the bills, put a little money in the bank, and we started to get along all right, and then we started to fight. And every night I came home, there was an argument. He was nasty. We quarreled. He accused me of immoral acts, of being approached by men, and then about 6 weeks ago he left.
Well, would you like your husband to return?
Yes, I would, but not under his conditions, because I can't give up my job just to satisfy his principle, and we'll just starve.
Do you see any justification in what you're doing? Your husband states this is improper.
I see nothing improper about it. My husband is thinking of about 25 or 30 years ago. In fact, he's an actor. He should know that about 50 years ago, actors were considered very loose and immoral people. These days, the art of stripping is considered a legal profession. We are licensed by the state of New York. We are fingerprinted. We are registered through the FBI. If we have...
Well, I want your husband to present his position, and under the circumstances, you think it's a perfectly proper thing to do.
Absolutely.
Are you employed at the present time?
No, sir. I have to admit that I am not at the moment employed as an actor. However, I have every reason to believe that this is a temporary situation very soon to be alleviated, my agent tells me. And however, I think that the problem I would like to present to the board is aside from a problem of whether or not I am working at any specific time in my married life.
Well, aside from work, how do you feel?
Well, aside from work, it's I feel that I'm placed in a very difficult moral position. I have very strong moral principles.
Well, have you any suggestion to make?
Yes, I have several suggestions to make. I fundamentally don't believe, I should tell the board, that any self-respecting husband wants his wife to do any sort of work. There is a career to be done in the home, raising two wonderful children. However, I am perfectly willing to face the facts of reality and practicality, the necessity of having an income, and if I'm not capable of supplying this income at any one time, I am perfectly agreed to let my wife go out and work. However, I feel there are dozens of kinds of jobs, of work, which my wife could very capably handle, which would supplement my income and allow us to resolve whatever financial difficulties we might encounter in the future, and at the same time have a mutually respecting home.
That's impossible, Mr. Alexander. I have two children. If I went out to take a job in the daytime as a waitress or a secretary, the salary is so small and the charge for babysitters is so high that by the time I paid the expenses and our rent and our food, we wouldn't have enough to go along. This is the only profession that I know of where I can make a good substantial living, take care of the children in the daytime myself. If I worked in the daytime on another job, I would have to have someone else raise them. This way I am with them and I also can take care of their financial needs.
You feel then that it's the only way that you can earn several $100s a week, and it's the solution to your problems, and it's a job.
It's the only way until my husband is able to take care of us completely.
And you feel there's nothing wrong in it?
Absolutely nothing wrong.
Well, whether or not my wife feels there is anything wrong in what she is doing is not a point. I'm not impugning my wife's motives in taking this sort of work, but I feel that the sort of work she is doing puts in the minds of other people, certain other people certainly, the idea and the appearance of immorality. And in addition, she certainly is making herself a target for I don't know what kind of indecent suggestions and improper
do
advances.
I look indecent now?
No, I said you are becoming a target, and I feel, as a self-respecting man, as a self-respecting husband and father, what kind of a position I am in when I allow my wife to make a target of herself, the mother of my children, to allow herself to become such a target. It is not what she is doing, you understand, that puts me in this position, but what is being possibly done.
The same thing is done to the lawyer's secretary and the doctor's nurse. They have the same problems as I have.
What about what you were telling us before about the supervision and so forth? I didn't mean to interrupt
my
at that
children.
time. Yes, but you
Yes.
told us there's supervision in these places.
Of myself. Oh, of course. In the state of New York, you must carry an ID card if you work in any place where they sell alcoholic beverages. You must have this card renewed every 2 years, and you are thoroughly checked. And the people that work with you, the waiters, the bosses, the agents, whoever works in the place where you work, also must carry the same card. And they do not receive this card if they have any charges against them whatsoever.
Well, do you think the card makes it not immoral in any way?
I can't be an immoral person if the FBI in the state of New York presents me with this card.
Well, did you say your wife was an immoral person?
No, most assuredly I did not say my wife is an immoral person. However, I feel that the sort of work she is doing contributes towards an attitude of immorality on the part of other people.
I see immorality all around me, and it has nothing to do with exotic dancers.
I see a variety of things all around me, none of which I would particularly care to involve myself with.
Well, do you, as the respondent wife here and the exotic dancer, think this has anything to do with your personal ideals or character?
Mr. Alexander, my job has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with what I think, what I feel, how I would act in public or in my home or my personal character. In fact, in my neighborhood, the place where I live, and I have my children and where my husband has lived with me, I am considered a very respectable woman. I have a very fine reputation as a good mother and a good housewife.
And this is just a job?
That's all it is. It's just a job until he can do something for us.
Well, my answer to the statement of my wife's that this is just a job, I think can be phrased very briefly. I feel very strongly, I believe very strongly, that there are limits to which a human being, a person, can go to earn money for purely material reasons.
I think you're
Conceivably,
going back 50
I could
years.
take my almost 3-year-old boy out onto the streets with me and panhandle should an untenable financial situation
That's
arrive in our
illegal.
house.
That's illegal.
I could also hold up a bank or a gasoline
That's
station.
illegal, too.
But the crimes in this case, to me, are not the crimes against society that are so difficult in a practical situation of needing money as much as the crime against myself as a human being in this society.
Aren't you
I am
society?
not a criminally minded person. I cannot live a life that is based on a morality so flimsy.
Well, your husband has stated himself in a very expressed himself in a very forthright manner. He says that he believes that this is a violation of his principle. And you feel that you can't give up your job just to satisfy that?
I absolutely refuse to give up my money that comes in, that takes care of my children, that pays our rent, buys our food, just to satisfy what he thinks his principle is.
Well, you understand
Unless
that you...
he can do something else about it. If he can do something else about it, then I'd be just as happy to stay home and be a mother and a housewife.
Well, you understand that you have submitted this matter to mediation and that you have agreed to abide by the
Yes.
decision of the mediators.
Yes.
Dr. Eddy?
I'm a little perplexed with the concern for morality on the part of one who is in the theater, which sometimes presents various phases of life. Also, your deep concern now when you courted your wife when she was this exotic dancer. You had no question of her morals at that time. You're now stating that you do not feel that she herself has been immoral in the carrying out of her art or profession or whatever it is of the exotic dancer, and yet you say it hurts. And you have nothing at this time as a substitute to offer that you can provide in a practical way to take care of your family. So aside from, I don't think that you're in position on a rather vague statement of principle, at least it seems vague to me, to ask your wife to give up working at night at a recognized form of entertainment. Whether I like it or other people like it is not involved in this case. That to give that up, when during the day she's keeping the house and taking care of the children and paying the bills, as long as it's necessary for her to do it.
Well, Dr. Eddy...
I would be on the side of the position the wife has taken under these circumstances.
Do you agree with that, Commissioner Coffey?
No, I think I disagree with that entirely. I think that this man agreed to marry this woman on condition that she would give up strip-teasing.
And she did.
And she did. And now the question is the preservation of this marriage. This man is seriously troubled by his wife's occupation. It makes him unhappy. It is impossible for him to maintain the marriage relationship with his wife so long as the wife insists on doing precisely this. It isn't true that she can't get other work. And it isn't true that you give up or you make your husband unhappy simply because he happens to be unemployed for a period of time. Millions of people in this country are unemployed. The wife's duty is to maintain the happiness of the home, of the husband. And she is not doing this. She harps and she insists on the maintenance of the children, but completely disregards the feelings of the husband. She's ready to wreck this marriage, purely on that issue. And I can't go along with you, Doctor.
Well, Dr. Eddy, it's only through the exchange of opinion that we find truth.
Well, do you think a woman's point of view might be heard?
I'd be interested.
I would too.
I think there's something very deep here. I have a feeling for both of them, but I think the husband here is forgetting that we are living in different times. If this woman did anything that he didn't happen to like and just call it a violation of principle, would not be an excuse for his saying, well, I don't want her to do it because I don't like it. I think it reflects upon me. I think he does feel a sense of frustration and insecurity because he's put her in the position where she can say, I'm doing it because I have to do it as a matter of material needs. I think there's something deeper that both a man and a woman have to take into consideration these days. Perhaps even more than the actual physical, material need of supporting her children, which no one can take any issue with, is something of expression of herself. And the husband, as an artist himself, ought to realize that perhaps there is something. And for him to take the position that because outsiders would consider her form of expression in the art world something that they would criticize, that should be the thing, the rock upon which he is willing to let his marriage be broken, I think is wrong. It seems to me that he has to realize that there's something more than what people think. Does he think she's immoral? If he thought she was immoral, I could understand his position. But when he admits that he does not think she's immoral, and she feels that it's impossible for her to try to meet this situation in any other way but the way that she can express herself, I think he's unjustified in taking that position. I think we have to face it that today in this world, the woman as well as the man is entitled to channels through which she can express whatever it is that she needs. At this moment, it's security that she's trying to provide, and I'd be all for the woman, and with a great deal of regret that the husband is taking that position, and suggest to him that he rethink his own thinking and see whether he can, for the children's sake, or say, well, what difference does it make what the others say, but what my wife is, and therefore to the husband I would say, without a question, that you owe it to yourself, for your children's sake, to let your wife participate in a family situation that would help so that you wouldn't break up.
Well, is it Dr.
Judge Cross.
Judge Cross, I'd like to rebut, if I may, I think on 2 points at least. One is, I have certainly no objection to my wife finding a creative outlet of any kind. Let us suppose, however, that I don't agree that her outlet as chosen is creative, which I do not. But from a practical standpoint, and I agree with you thoroughly that it is necessary that my wife bring home some of the bacon. I am not doing so.
Oh.
However, I feel that there are other ways she can get a creative outlet. She is a good dancer, just plain dancer, with her clothes on. She does not have to get up in a public place and make the sort of gyrations and gestures which she does in order to bring home this bacon.
I think I'd like to add something. The situation might easily be reversed here, Judge Cross, and I should be interested in the woman's reaction if the situation were changed. We are not stressing enough here the duty of the wife to the husband and the maintenance of the marriage tie. What does it matter if his position is right or wrong? The fact is that he is deeply wounded by this, and he is unable to maintain his relationship with her so long as she insists on continuing to wound his feelings.
But, sir, is that important, wounding someone's feelings when you have to
I
have
think it's
milk on the
very
table for your
important
children in the
married
morning?
life that you get along with your husband, that you try to
My
maintain
children don't care about that,
harmonious,
sir.
but your children are not your entire family.
Well,
your husband is part of your family.
This is the thing now. If my husband put the food on the table and paid the landlord when he came to the door, I wouldn't be giving him this argument about working. I would quit working immediately.
Well, just one moment, my dear. If this situation that we're in is a very recent existence, considering that over 80% of our married life thus far, I have brought home enough money to pay the rent and to put milk in the mouths and so forth. I am running into a difficult situation, certainly perhaps no different than the steel strike situation or the coal miners when they're out for 6, 7, 8 months at a time.
You can't go 9 months without food in the house and without the
We
rent
haven't
paid.
gone 8 or 9 months.
It's almost 9 months.
We have gone all of that time. You have been bringing home quite a bit of money, so you have been doing well, and I have been living with it. I have done the best I can to adjust without you having to adjust for any length of time, living under my conditions.
I would gladly adjust.
May we clarify one point? We ask this of the respondent wife. Can you...
Quantitative.
I beg your pardon?
It's quantitative with my wife.
What's
I make enough money to support my
what's
family.
quantitative?
Her argument, she makes 3 times as much money when she works as I make when I work. And she wants that 3 times as much money.
I don't want it. We need it.
We don't need it.
My
No
rent
human...
is too high for that.
Then we'll move.
You find a place, we'll move.
You see?
Our rent is too high. We pay $125 a month rent. How could we pay that on the kind of money you bring home?
Well, suppose we restore some element of order here, if we can, with a view to mediating this matter in a reasonable fashion so that these mediators can come to some conclusion. If there's a disagreement among the mediators, I'm sure that there'll be a majority because there's 3 of them. But may we ask you this question? Are you in a position to earn a living as a dancer without going to the extreme of disrobing?
I don't think so, Mr. Alexander. I haven't been offered any jobs as a dancer.
Well, are you a dancer of such quality and talent that you can use your talents?
I think my husband overestimates me. I think he thinks I'm a little bit better
If you
than I
want a
really
professional
am.
opinion, Mr. Alexander, yes, my wife is that good a dancer
I've never
compared
had
to the
any
other
dancing.
dancers working today.
Well, why is it that
I've never had any training in dancing.
you're not a trained
I have
professional
never taken
dancer?
any dancing lessons in my entire life.
And so that your claim to fame and substance and success as a professional entertainer is as an exotic dancer or a stripper.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Eddy, have you anything further to say?
Yes, I want to say that I believe just as strongly as Commissioner Corsa does about the importance of maintaining the home. I feel very strongly that this man, by reason of his unemployment, his sensitiveness, his concern, is now putting up a straw man and making it the excuse for his insecurity and so on.
I don't need a straw man, Dr. Eddy.
I know you don't, but you need support, and it's embarrassing to have support from any source. I feel that this woman made an agreement. She kept that agreement until the conditions were changed, and it seemed necessary to her to return to the work that she had done before, when you knew her and at the time you married her. I feel that she has also stated very definitely that when conditions improve and it's possible to restore the home and you're able to take the role that you, I'm sure, want to do and are capable of doing under different circumstances, then this present engagement will cease. And I would hope that you would understand that what she is doing is trying to keep you and the children together, and that you would make an atmosphere in which she could work and serve her home and her children and help support it in her career, which
Well,
she has.
Dr. Eddy, Commissioner Coffey disagrees with you. Do you agree with Dr. Eddy, Judge Cross?
Completely, and he stated it well. I might be accused of being partial to the woman. I agree with Dr. Eddy fully.
Well, while the board understands completely the position of the husband and agrees unquestionably that it would be preferable by far if his wife were not employed as she is, it is nevertheless the opinion of the majority of this board, everything considered, that from a practical point of view, the wife's position is understandable and in that sense reasonable. It is understood that the moment the husband's position is improved and he can resume his place as the responsible head of the house, that the wife will of course discontinue this activity which is so disturbing to the husband. Perhaps that will come very soon, and peace of mind and good feeling will be restored all around. We express our thanks to our mediators and look forward to another session of the Court of Human Relations. I think it was John Ruskin who said, "It's difficult to be a philosopher when you have a toothache, and it's not easy to be tolerant on an empty stomach."